And so welcome everybody who is here in person or watching this later online. Today in class, we're going over the next homework assignment, and we'll both go over just like what is the homework assignment, and I'll be implementing it for you here, sort of live. One of the main takeaways, well, there's a lot of, I guess, takeaways. So the most obvious takeaway maybe is that like you'll get some actual working code out of this. And I'm not going to upload that working code to GitHub, but you'll have the video, you'll be able to see what the code is, and so you'll be able to type it out yourself and follow my procedures to get it running. So that's maybe the most obvious takeaway, but I think maybe a more important takeaway is that as I'm working, you'll see that I'll encounter lots of different problems and bugs, and see like what is my thought process about how I work through those problems, and I think those are going to be a lot more sort of like subtle points to take away, and really the way to sort of level up as a programmer is just to see and work with a lot of more experienced people, see how they tackle their different problems, and you'll in any one given session, you're not going to absorb everything, but there'll be maybe one or two tricks that you'll absorb and add to your repertoire. And as you do more sessions like this, I'll be adding more and more of these tricks. Twitch has, so if you're not familiar with Twitch, it's like a live streaming service for, it's mostly for like gamers, but there's a big group of programmers who use Twitch to live stream their programming sessions and watch more famous programmers as they're at work, and just see like what sort of tricks do they use. Again, if anybody who's here live, if you have any questions, I have my National Security Agency iPod connected that is monitoring the chat, so I can see any any questions that you type into the chat. Or if you want to ask a question verbally, then just raise your hand in Zoom, and I'll get to you when it's a good stopping point. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna share my screen now. And let's switch over to, there's VS Code, Firefox, there we go. And so we're working on homework 3, scraping from eBay. And so description, we're gonna be taking information from eBay and storing the results in a JSON file. So before we go any further, let's just take a quick look at ebay.com and get a rough idea of what's gonna happen. And I'm going to search here for hammers. And so there's a lot of hammers posted on eBay, both new and used, all sorts of different brands. And what we want is basically, so there's a lot of good information here, but because it's in HTML, we can't just process it directly. And so what we're going to do is we're going to convert this HTML into JSON. And then if we were like a business, we could do the like what you did in your previous homework assignment of like plotting that JSON information in order to figure out like how much are the typical hammers selling for, or like new hammers versus used hammers, or like if there's, this is a really expensive hammer right here, like what makes a hammer so valuable, and are people actually purchasing these really expensive hammers? So that's sort of the big picture motivation. And again, converting this information that's in HTML right now into JSON format. Sort of the right way to think of this project is that it's a compiler, that we're compiling this HTML or converting this HTML into the JSON format. And basically the vast majority of programming projects, especially for data science sort of people, fall into this category of somehow converting data from one format into another format, where this new format is somehow better for whatever our purposes are. So in this case, the JSON format is better than this HTML format because it's easier to work with in Python, extracting out the information and plotting it, or doing whatever analysis we want to do. You have a little more than a week to complete this assignment. My hope is that since we're going to be doing most of the assignment in class today, that it'll be a relatively easy assignment for you all. But I also want to caution against make sure that you don't like put this assignment off to the last minute. I know that a lot of people on the previous homework 2, I think maybe pushed the assignment, waited a little bit too long to work on it, and so either had to submit late or really struggling towards the end. There's a lot of weird things that can come up with like web scraping, just different error messages that can happen, and it might be Python's fault, it might be the terminal's fault, it might be Firefox's fault, a lot of ways that things can go wrong here. And so making sure that you get an early start on this assignment is a good idea. So yeah, what we're gaining from this assignment, so understanding how web scraping works. I think if there's just like one assignment that is maybe the most important one for this class in terms of how it's going to be useful for you outside of class, either in your future careers, whatever you choose, whether it's a programming job or a marketing, whatever you go into, or like at other academically, like for your senior thesis or other classes, actually efficiently getting the information off of web pages is huge, and you'll definitely have lots of opportunities to use this in your life. So say this is maybe the most important assignment from that perspective of usefulness outside of class. And again, so your previous project, you did sort of all on your own, but it was a little bit smaller of a project, just sort of making the graphs. So I don't know how many lines of code everybody's files ended up being, but maybe 20 lines of code. You could reasonably do it in like 20 lines of code. This is going to be a much larger project, much more similar to the Markdown compiler project, and so there'll be just more things involved here, and so we'll see, like, again, my thought process of how to actually start a project like this. And then again, this is going to be really integrating all the knowledge that we've seen so far in this class, so both the Python knowledge and our HTML knowledge from the very beginning, along with our JSON knowledge for outputting our results. So everything's combining together. Everything's been building up to this assignment here. Okay, so now concrete instructions. And again, I'm going to go relatively fast in the lecture here. If you do have questions about anything as I go on, feel free to put them in the chat or to raise your hand, and I'll get to them that way. So this assignment has 3 parts. So part 1, and then part 2 and part 3 down here. And part 1 is the main part. That's basically building all of your Python code. This file that we're going to be building is called eBay-DL, so similar to the YouTube DL that we worked with a while back, but now we're downloading things specifically from eBay. And we'll go over the details here in a second, but let's skip ahead to the idea of part 2. Part 2 is about running your file and just making sure that it runs and you can get results. And then part 3 is about creating a GitHub repo that explains what your project is doing, similar to the GitHub repo that you created for the last project. So today in class, we're going to be focusing on part 1 here. And as we're testing things out, we'll be doing part 2 here as well. Part 3 is something that'll be completely on your own, creating the GitHub repo. And yeah, we'll talk about we'll see. So submission is just submitting your GitHub link to Sakai, like your last project was. And then we'll talk about the grading rubric here as we go through actually all of these 3 sessions, these sections of the project. But maybe I'll just highlight that it's an 18-point project right now. Okay, so yeah, we're creating a Python file named ebaydl.py. And this file is going to have to use the 3 libraries that we talked about on Monday: argparse, requests, and BS4. The idea of argparse is that this is going to make our program easy to use from the terminal. And in particular, we're going to be able to specify what search terms we want to extract from on the terminal when we're running our code. So by search term, I mean, here I'm searching for hammers, but maybe somebody wants to search for stuffed animals, and we get results that look like this. And so your program is going to be able to handle any possible search term that somebody could use. And so because of that, it's not like a one-off program. It's something that could be reused for multiple purposes, and potentially given to, say, like a marketing person, so they can explore different aspects of eBay and just automatically get the data for whatever they're trying to use. The requests library is for actually downloading the results, communicating with eBay, and the BS4 library is going to be used for parsing the HTML that we download with requests and actually doing the extraction of the information. There's 6 pieces of information that we're going to be trying to extract from each of our each of the items that eBay returns. So things like the title or the name of the item, whether it's pre-owned or used, what is the price, what is the shipping, things like that. And then we'll output all of that information into a JSON library. Let's see. What we'll do next is dive into the code, but before actually getting into code, are there any questions that people have? Now's a good time to pause for questions if anyone has questions. Okay, so then over here in VS Code, what I'm going to do is we'll do it inside of our week 8 folder here. I'll create a new folder called homework 3. And then inside there, let's create a new file for my ebay-dl.py. And the first thing I always do whenever I create a new Python file is make sure that I can run it, python3 ebay-dl.py. And I'm getting this error message saying it can't open the file. And again, that's because my path is not set correct right now. That right now I'm just in my CS40 folder, but I need to first go in my week 8 folder and then my homework 3 folder. And that's specific for my computer just because that's where I chose to make my assignment at. And now if I type ls, remember that ls stands for list, and it tells us what are the files in the folder. Here's my eBay DL. And so now press the up arrow to get back to my Python command, and now it runs without any error messages. So we have our file created successfully this way. Let's go back to the assignment here. And so part 1, the first step, use the argparse library to get a search term from the command line. So argparse is a library that I can never remember the details of how to do things. So I'm just going to go ahead and search for argparse. And I guess you'll notice that I'm using DuckDuckGo as my default search engine for their privacy features. And then the first result here is the link to the argparse Python documentation, and then an example right here of how to use argparse. And I'm just going to start by copying and pasting this into my Python file over here. And so again, we're importing argparse. This line right here is sort of defining my program. I'll go ahead and change this to be download information from eBay and convert to JSON. This is again just like a description, a helper information about what my program is going to do. And then the different types of arguments. And last time we talked about the difference between arguments that have no dashes in front of them like this and arguments that do have the dashes in front of them. The main difference is that if there's no dashes in front, then there has to be, it's a required argument, something that must be provided, and you can't put a default. But if there's dashes in front of it, then you can have a default. So what I'm going to do now is create an argument for search terms call it search term. And here, this is something that is going to be a required argument, something that you have to type in. And the reason it's required is because in order to download information from eBay, you have to have a search term that you're downloading from. And there are a bunch of other parameters that go into this add argument function. And to be honest, I have no idea what they do. I'd have to read the documentation. And again, anytime I'm using these libraries, it's like always referencing the documentation. But here, this is sort of a minimal sort of argument thing. And then just to make sure it works, I'm going to print args.search terms equals args.search terms, like that. And let's see, I guess I put it singular up here, so it's singular down here. Let's go ahead and save that and come down here and run this. And now we're getting this usage command, or this usage error, telling me how I'm supposed to use this program. And in particular, I have to pass in this search term field, which is a required argument. And so we'll do the, since I started off with the example of hammers, let's do hammer like that. I do that, and we get hammer like this. The next example that I used when I was searching in eBay was stuffed animals. So I want to go ahead and try stuffed animals down here and see what happens, like this. And you can see now that I'm getting this error message right here, unrecognized argument animal. And the reason for that is that anytime there's a space inside of your arguments that get passed to argparse, Python thinks that this is a whole separate argument right here, that animal is not part of the search term, but it's something else. And we've only defined one argument, so it doesn't know what to do with it. In order to pass this in as a single term, I'll have to put it inside of quotation marks like that. And now I get my search term as stuffed animal with that space inside of it. And there we go. And anytime I'm working on things, I like to keep things organized. So adding comments telling me what's going on in each section of code. And again, I sort of break this up into paragraphs. Here's my paragraph about getting the command line arguments, get command line arguments. And then I just have to read the comment to figure out what this paragraph is doing. And if this is what I'm interested in looking at, I can read the code in detail. But if not, it lets me just skip over these lines of code and know that I don't have to read them in detail. Let's go ahead and save that again. And I think this is going to be complete for the first part of our assignment here. So use the argparse library to get a search term from the command line. And this is worth, if we look back at the rubric as well, use of the argparse library to pass information from the command line, worth 3 points. So we've just completed, or got 3 points for our program. The next step here is to use the requests library to download the first 10 web page results for your search term. So before we look at this code, I want to talk a little bit more about what I mean by the first 10 web page results here. And if we go back over here to eBay, so here we're looking at the stuffed animal search term. And there's a lot of different stuffed animals that are getting listed here. And this is all the very first page of the, this is the first page of the search results because it's got a number 1 down here. And if I were to click on, say, the 5 right here, then this is the 5th page of the search results. And you can see there's a lot of stuffed animals being listed on eBay right now. So there's a lot of information I could download, but you're only required to download the first 10 pages worth of information. The key next step, though, is to figure out what is the URL that I need to access from Python in order to get this right here. And this is the URL right up here that gives me the search term, the search for these stuffed animals. If you remember from a long time ago, there's in the structure of URLs so we talked about the schema last time and the host or the domain right here. And then this right here is called the path. Everything up to the question mark is called the path. And then after the question mark, these are called the query parameters of the URL. And these query parameters specify like what the person is searching for. And you can see there's a lot of different query parameters inside of here, but this really awkwardly named one of _nkw is the one that contains whatever I'm actually searching for here, and that's stuffed animals. And you can also see that instead of having a space right here, it's stuffed plus animals. So if you have a space that you're working with, you'll have to do something special, replacing the space with a plus. And then the next thing that I'm looking for is some information about what page I'm currently looking at. And over here, _pgn equals 5. So this kind of sounds like page number. And I know I'm on page 5. So this makes me think that that's the thing that I should change if I'm trying to change which page I'm looking at. So I'm going to do some experiments real quick. And I'm going to change this right here from stuffed animals to hammer. And we'll see what happens. And we can see that as it's loading up here, so hammer has been put in the search bar for me, and now it's all hammers listed down here. So this is in fact what I have to change in order to change what is being searched for. And now let's change this 5. Let's try going to page 8, put an 8 right there. And let's check what page number I'm on by scrolling all the way down to the bottom of the page. And there we go. We're now on page 8 right here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this now and paste it inside of VS Code like this. And we'll put it in quotation marks like so. And now I just have to replace this part right here with whatever my search term is, and where to go? This part right here with whatever page number I'm trying to look at. So let's go ahead and try that out. So we already have our search term variable right here. And so let's change this by doing something like plus args dot search term. And now that's just going to, whatever the person typed in as their search term on the command line, that'll get put right here in the URL. And then our page number, let's scroll a little bit to the right. I'm not sure if you can all see that right now because Zoom is covering that up. So let's make this, we'll make this a multi-line thing. I'll say URL equals this, and then URL plus equals args.search term, and URL plus equals all of this over here. So again, this is still just the URL from eBay. I've just separated out into multiple lines so that it doesn't get blocked by Zoom here. And then I have this page number right here that I'll also have to replace. And so I'm going to real quick create a page number variable, and we'll set it equal to 8 for now. And then do again URL plus equals page number spelled correctly. And then another URL plus equals this down here. And so my goal is that this URL variable should still be the exact same URL that I have over on Firefox. And so I'm just going to print it out just to double check that that's the case. Print URL equals comma URL like this. One of the sort of common mistakes, and maybe it's not really a mistake, but common things that beginner programmers do is try to do like too much at once. And so here, I've just done some stuff here, and rather than going on to my next task in terms of what I have to do, I need to really verify that what I have right here is actually correct, and because nothing else that I can do can make sense if I can't actually create a URL variable. So I always just like work on a small piece of the code at once and try to see whether it works or doesn't work. And then once I've gotten that piece of code working, move on to the next thing. So let's save this and come down here and run it. and it says can't convert into string implicitly. And so in order to figure out what is going on right here, I'm going to look at the line number right here, line 14. So that's where the error is happening at. And anytime we get this type error of can't convert something, in here an int to a string, here's my int, it's an 8, page number is an int, and then URL is a string. So in order to convert these, I'll have to wrap that inside of string str like this, save that down here, rerun it, and now we have this working URL down here. Eddie, is that your hand?
Yes, I have a question about the page number. So we don't need to create argument for the page number? If not, how do we just...
So yeah, this is a great question. And the question
Yes.
is like here, I've hard coded the page number as 8, but actually in the requirements of the homework assignment, it says to download the first 10 pages. And so what I'm doing is that I'm sort of chunking my, or let's see, before I say what I'm doing again, the question is how does this fit into this requirement here? That the requirement is 10 pages, but I'm just working on one specific page right now. And the answer is that I want to, again, divide up my programming tasks into the smallest possible chunks that I can think of and not try to tackle everything at once. So I'm not going to start by trying to work on 10 web pages at once. I'm going to start by working on just one web page, get something working on just one web page, and then make it work on all 10 web pages. And so in this case, what we're doing here, we have just one particular web page. I got it working for that. Now the way to make it work for the first 10 web pages is to put it into a for loop. So for page number in range 10 like this, and let's indent all of that. And now we're going to get the URLs for the first 10 web pages. So go ahead and run that. And you can see now over here, my pgin is incrementing, and I'm getting my 10 different URLs like this. Did that answer your question, Eddie?
Yeah, perfectly, thank you.
You're welcome. So now, anytime I'm doing web scraping, or really any task that involves these sort of ranges and something other than just Python, I need to make sure that the first 10 pages actually like start with page 0 and go to page 9, and not page 1 to page 10. So I'm going to go back over to eBay here for a second, and I'm going to change this page number from page 8 to page 0. And we don't get any sort of error message, so that looks good to me. But now let's see what happens if I do page 1. And actually, the results that we're getting back are the same results. That if you notice before that, so this is the top item in the results. In page 1, it has this little like recommended hammer by brand little advertisement thing up here. But this is the actual first search result right here. The Thor copper rawhide, blah, 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 from $24.91 to $144.18. And that's, again, looking up here right now, there's a 1 right here. I'm on page 1. But if I press back so that I'm now looking at page 0, this is still the same exact search results. And so if I make my for loop go from 0 to 9, it's going to do the first page of results twice, because page 0 and page 1 happen to be the same thing. Another way I'm going to verify that real quick is if I scroll all the way down to the bottom again, where the page numbers are listed, you can see that the numbering down here actually starts with 1. With the, so in this interface that people can click on, there is no 0. Most people are not Python programmers that think 0 is the first number. And so eBay is catering to this population by making the first number of pages be 1. And so in order to make my program in VS Code actually handle that, I'll change my range from 0 to 10 to 1 to 11, like that. And rerun that and just double checking again that, okay, there we go. 1 to 10, that looks good to me. Lauren, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm still a little confused on the last URL plus equals and the third URL plus equals. Would you be able to go over again what those strings mean?
Sure. So what I did was I found the URL that I want to scrape up here, and then I tried to figure out like what is the information in here that controls the different things that I'm trying to find out. So here, this part of the URL, like _nkw equals hammer. By changing hammer to, let's do nail now next. By changing it up here, it changes it like in the document as if I actually typed in nail right here in the search and pressed the search button. And so what I'm doing in Python is just modifying, trying to create those URLs so that here I'm typing in stuffed animal in my command right down here, python3 ebaydl.py stuffed animal. And what I want is a URL that I can just copy and paste into Firefox, and it's going to work. So there's stuffed animal. Let's try it with hammer. And now you can see that hammer is there. And let's do one that we have. Let's do laptop like this. So we have some new search terms right here. And I'm just going to copy and paste this URL into Firefox. And you can see that because it has the word laptop in here, all the results that I'm getting from eBay are laptops. And so that's the motivation about what these lines are doing. In terms of the actual mechanics of what they're doing, here, this is equivalent to, and I think this, oh, no, you still won't be able to see it. So what I originally had was something that looked like this, where I just copied and pasted the URL from Firefox into VS Code, and then found the spot that contained the word hammer and took it out and replaced it with the search term that I'm getting from argparse. But because that's such a long URL and it's going off the edge of the screen to where you can't see it in through Zoom, it's covering that up with a little window. I decided to just break it up into multiple lines like this. And this is what we end up with. These strings right here, there's a lot of like basically gibberish looking stuff inside of here. And to be honest, I have no idea what any of this does. I have no idea what LH title description equals 0 means. And I have no idea what underscore sakat equals 0 means. Or what this RT equals NC means. I have no idea. Those are like eBay specific things that for whatever reason, eBay has them in their URL, but we don't need to know what they are in order to work with the URL. We just need to know that we found the spot where the word hammer was. We replaced the word hammer with what it is that the user is typing in on the terminal. And then we found the spot where the page number was, and we replaced that page number with the page number that we're looking for. Did that answer your question, Lauren?
Yeah, I guess I'm still kind of wondering, like, is that a general sort of framework? Like, could you search a similar thing on Google and just replace like the word that you're searching for? Or is this just like lucky with eBay that it works like this?
Yeah, great question. So this is general. Anytime there's a website that has one of these forms like this, you can always go through this procedure. So like here, let's say, so we were just doing laptop, so let's do laptop again. And if you look up here in the URL, you can see that here there's this Q equals laptop. And if I change this Q equals laptop to Q equals, let's go hammer, then it's going to change here in the actual results. So if you wanted to somehow scrape the Google search results and present them inside of Python, then you could do that. There's a, let's see, if we go back to translate.google.com, and so one of the lab extra credits a few weeks ago had a Python interface into Google like this, or into Google Translate. And so here, let's translate hello world into Korean. And you can see up here actually that as I typed in hello world, it changed the URL up here to hello world. And so what that library was actually doing is exactly what we're doing here. It just figured out what is the URL for this web page that translates hello world into Korean, or if we wanted to change it from Korean, say Spanish, you can see now here this TL changed to ES, and so we can change it to whatever language we want. Let's do Chinese by doing ZH right there, and it'll take a minute, but maybe ZH is not what they want for Chinese. It's something else. I'm not sure. But that's the
I think
basic idea by
CHN.
changing stuff.
CHN. Oh.
Let's see. Well, that's so yeah. One of the things about web scraping is that it takes a lot of fiddling around with playing with these URLs to get things to behave how you want. But once you've figured out whatever it is for that web page, then it's always just modifying this URL somehow to get the result that you want. Those are great questions, Lauren.
Thank you.
Any other questions right now? Okay.
Professor,
Go ahead.
one question. I'm using the method of downloading the HTML from yesterday from WeGet. It's apparently acquiring or requesting the URLs, but they are not downloading to my folder.
So yeah, those sorts of let's see. I'd be happy to answer that one-on-one later, but
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk about it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah, that segues us into, now that we have this URL, we have to do something with the URL, or actually downloading the information from eBay. And so we're going to use that requests library. So import requests. And now down here, let's see if I remember how to do this. Basically, every time I do this, I have to Google all of the details. But since I just was doing it this week on Monday, I might be able to remember it off the top of my head. So we'll try it out. So r equals requests.get of URL like this. And then r dot, we'll start off with the status code. And I'm going to make this its own sort of separate paragraph. So up here, this will be build the URL. And then down here, this will be download the HTML. And so let's say status equals r.status code and print status equals comma status. And notice that every time I'm printing stuff, I'm always telling myself exactly what it is that I'm printing, so that when I'm looking at the output down here, it becomes easy to see what corresponds to which locations in the code. It's another sort of, again, it's not really a mistake, but a thing that beginner programmers do is you don't tell yourself what it is you're printing, so it makes looking at the output much more difficult. This is every sort of remotely experienced programmer I know, anytime they print stuff, always label what it is. if I were, yeah, so a common thing in job interviews is to have to write some code. And if I saw somebody writing some code and printing out variables in a job interview and not like saying what it is that they're printing out, that'd be a big red flag for me that I may not want to hire this person. But if I saw somebody doing like printing out information like this, then that's a big thumbs up of good sign to hire that person. So we want to look at the status code, and then there's the r.text gives us the actual contents of the web page. And in this case, these are HTML web pages, so I'm going to store that into a variable called HTML. This is going to be a really big thing if everything's working correctly. So I'm not going to print out the whole HTML, and instead I'm just going to print out like the first, say, 50 characters of the HTML. And we'll save that, come down here, rerun this. And I can see that the program's taken a little bit longer to run because each one of these calls to requests.get is a little bit slow. It takes a second or two to contact eBay, download all the information. And there are ways to sort of speed this up through like parallel processing and things like that. And Firefox or Chrome or any of these browsers, they do that in, if they were downloading 10 web pages, they would do that in parallel to make it faster. But that's beyond what we need to do here. We'll just make them all happen one after the other. And here we can see that for all of these web pages, the status code was 200. Again, 200 means success, so that's really great. And then if we look at the HTML, this is all looking like what I might expect the very beginning of an HTML document to look like. So, so this is a good sign to me that we're actually getting the information that we want. I'm going to go ahead and comment out these print statements here for a little bit because, well, actually, I'm going to leave the status one in and comment out the HTML. The status one might be useful just to make sure that things actually worked, because again, 200 means success. So if I see 200, then everything worked. But I don't really want to actually be looking at this HTML every time. I just wanted to see it there once to make sure that it's actually getting some HTML values. And so this is actually it for our requests portion of the assignment. That coming back over here. So use the request library to download the first 10 web page results for your search term. We've completed that step. We've downloaded those web pages, and on the grading rubric, that's another 3 points that we've just gotten for the homework. The next part, though, is where things are going to get a lot more difficult. So before going on to that, William, you have a question?
Yeah, did you define request earlier in the code or import it or anything? Because I'm getting it underlined in the
Yeah, up
line.
at the very top, I do import
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Wonderful.
So for all of these libraries that we're using, argparse, requests, and next beautiful soup, they'll have to be an import statement up at the top. And argparse and requests are both traditionally imported this way. Beautiful soup is traditionally imported as from BS4 import beautiful soup. It's, yeah, this and import BS4, they're basically the same thing. So it doesn't, they both give you access to beautiful soup. This way you just have to type beautiful soup by itself. If you did this, you'd have to do bs4.beautifulsoup. So different libraries just have their own sort of traditional ways of importing, and this is the traditional way of importing beautiful soup that all of the tutorials and the official documentation imports it this way. Sophia?
Yeah, so for the use the request library to download the first 10 web page results, does like each new page, does that refresh the index or does it keep going? I don't know if that makes sense.
I'm not sure what you mean by refresh the index.
So like by first 10 web page results, does that just mean the first 10 results like that show up?
Exactly. So it's like if I were to come down here, I'm currently on page 6. It's like clicking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 down here.
Oh, okay. So it's not the actual item within the page number, right? It's just
Exactly. It's not the
okay.
items, it's
Okay.
the page that contains all this big list of items.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so this next text here is going to be a little bit trickier than the previous ones. There's going to be more subtleties involved. So we've just done the importing from BS4. Next, what I have to do is extract all of these pieces of information. And let's start by extracting the name of an item. In order to get this piece of information, what I have to do is I have to know like what is the CSS class that's associated with each of the names of these items. So here I'm going to right click on this and go to inspect elements. And as that's loading up down here, so this right here, so down in the bottom part of my screen, my mouse is hovering over this, this thing right here. And as it's hovering over this item title, you can see in the middle of my screen, this blue box highlighting this stuff right here. And that means that this is in fact the HTML associated with that particular item. And we can see that if I click this arrow, so here's the text of that item, and it has this class of s-item __ title. And again, this is something that's unique to eBay, that the eBay developers just selected that this should be the class name that they reference in CSS to make this thing styled like it is. And my hypothesis is that this is going to be the same for all of these items in this list of items here. So I'll check that just by looking at another one real quick. And yep, looking at this, this other item, it's also s-item __ title. And so I think if I search for all of the, basically create a CSS selector that matches this pattern right here, then that'll be able to find all of the names of all of the products here. So let's come back over here and do that. So we've built the URL, we've downloaded the HTML, and our next task is to say, we'll process the HTML. It's kind of a generic little paragraph right now, but I might come back and edit that later, but that'll get us started. And I want, so this is again something that I'd normally be having to look up, but I think I can do it from memory because we've did it before. So we said soup equals beautiful soup of HTML, and then my tags will be equal to soup.select of, let's see, what was the, here, I'm gonna copy and paste this over here like that. And because this is a class and not an actual item or an actual attribute or an element, I have to do the dot in front of it in order to make the CSS selector for that class. And so my hypothesis now is that this tags is going to be a list that contains all of the titles of all of the different items. And in order to verify that hypothesis, I'm going to print out these tags. And let's see, let's go ahead and do print tags equals tags like that. Save that, come down here, up arrow to rerun this. And there we go. So this is a little bit hard for me to read what's going on right now because my program is just continuing to run and run. That after it does one web page, it goes on to the next web pages. And what I would like to do is to have it just sort of pause so that I can look at the results. So I'm going to press Control-C down in the terminal to end my program. See that it gets this Python error keyboard interrupt because I pressed Control-C. And what I want to do is I'm going to temporarily change my range up here. I'm going to temporarily change this range so that it only does one of the URLs. And the sort of most straightforward way of doing that is to just put a 2 here like that, and now it'll only do the very first thing. But I'm going to be just a little bit fancier, and anytime I'm sort of feeling like I'm tempted when I'm writing my code, when I'm feeling tempted to write just a number, like something hard-coded, what I always do is instead of doing that, I add it as a parameter to my program. So add argument here of num pages, and this is going to be default equals 10. So args.num pages like this. And by default, it'll still be this this 10 value. But now this is something that I can pass in on the command line, and if I'm debugging like I am right now, I can change that to be just 1. And actually, as I'm remembering before, this in order to do 10 pages, this has to go up to 11. So we'll do num pages plus 1 like this. We save that, come down here, rerun it without putting the num pages. We see that we still get the same sort of results that we had before. Loading and loading many times, so I'm going to stop that, up arrow, and now add this dash dash num underscore pages equals to just 1, so it only downloads 1 page. Here we get this type error, can't convert int object to string implicitly. Again, anytime we have that, it's because we're using the wrong type of things. Whenever you pass in an argument to argparse, its default type is always as a string, so num pages here is a string, and so let's change this to an integer like that. Save down here, run. Num pages equals 1, and now it's actually downloading it and printing out the results, and it stops after just one thing so that we can take a look at what's going on here. I'm going to scroll up for a little bit, so you can see there's a lot of stuff that got printed out here in my tags equals. This is a list, and it's a pretty big list. That's giving me some good confidence that we're in the right direction because there's a lot of different items on eBay. You can also see that there's this whole like beautiful soup warning message up here. I think, so it's user warning, no parser was explicitly specified, and that is because right here on this line, I'm passing in HTML, but I'm not telling Beautiful Soup which parser to use. We were talking about the parsers a little bit before class started, but basically it doesn't matter which parser you use, except in edge cases. And so this is not an error message, it's just a warning message. But it's kind of annoying to me to have to look at this warning message, so I'm going to type in a parser right here. And since I don't know off the top of my head what they are, I'm just going to come back to our notes.py file from before and copy and paste that right there in order to get rid of this message. And again, I'm pretty confident this is going to work, but anytime I make any change to my program, I always immediately test it in order to verify that things still work. And now, yes, things are still working. That's excellent. And so the next thing that I want to do is come back down here to this tags variable. And this tags variable, again, is this list of all of the different titles of all of the different items. And this, as a list, is pretty hard to work with. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to print it out in a different way. And we'll do something like for tag in tags, print tag equals tag like that. So now each one will be on its own line, and hopefully that'll be easier to read. Rerun this. And there we go. So here's my big list of tags. And we can see that here's all of the different contents of them. And like this, it gives me just the entirety of the HTML tag, including the name of the tag and all the attributes and values. And in order to get the actual like content of the name, this right here, I have to do tag.text. The .text is what gives you the content of an HTML tag in the Beautiful Soup library. And so here's all of the different items that that are present on that eBay search. I'm going to just real quick change this from laptop. Let's go back to our hammer like this and make sure that we're not getting a bunch of laptops, but we're getting a bunch of things that look like hammers. So again, as I'm working, always testing out various variations, combinations of things to see, make sure my code's doing what I expect. Eddie?
Yeah, Professor, as you did, I put it into a loop, but it's still showing me a whole bunch of them.
So happy to take a look at that after class one-on-one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I think that'll take us too far away right now. Any other questions though about anything we've done with Beautiful Soup so far?
For me, it's returning empty lists when I run the program.
Okay, if your tags is going to be an empty list, there's multiple possible reasons why that's happening. One is that your selector right here is incorrect. There's maybe a typo in the selector, or a very common one is to forget the period out in front. That because this is a class, again, it has to have the period out in front in order to select it. Another common error is that let's say up here I have a typo in my URL somehow. So what could I do here? Let's just go ahead and delete all of that, save that, and come down here and rerun it. So now this URL is not going to have any items associated with it because it is it's just a different URL, but it's still a valid URL because it's still something that, like, ebay.com is still a valid URL to visit, and so I'm still getting this status 200. So you have to be very careful to make sure that whatever your URL is exactly matches what's in Firefox. And the reason I'm printing out the URL again is because that way, when I'm running my code, I can just copy and paste that into Firefox exactly and make sure that I get a valid result. Yeah, those are the two most common ways I think that your tags variable might come out empty. And I'm glad you asked that, because that's a very common thing to have happen. But if that's not fixing things, that's something that we'll have to look at one-on-one. Good question. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to jump back over to our assignment instructions here for a second. And here it says we'll need to create a Python list with the extracted items where each entry in the list is a dictionary. And so here, rather than actually just printing out this, this tag.text, really what I need to be doing is having a list. We'll call it, say, items, set it equal to the empty list, and then for tag in tags, we'll do items dot append of a dictionary where name tag dot text like this. So items is my list that's going to have everything, all of the items from my web page. Every time I find a new item, I'm going to append a dictionary to that item, to the list. And currently, that dictionary has just the name inside of it. And so that's this first thing right here, just the name. And what we're going to have to do next is extract out the next pieces of information to put those into the dictionary. Let's see. I want to, so we're not printing anything right now, but so I want to always add lots of good printing information. Let's do length of tags equals length of tags, just to see how many items am I getting here. And so we got 67 items on that first page. Let's see. Anytime, so we've made some changes here. I want to do another quick test here with my num pages. Right now I have it set equal to 1. And let's do num pages equals 2 and see what happens. Just to make sure that whatever changes I've made hasn't broken anything related to my num pages. And here what we can see is that the length of my tags is 67 in both of these situations. And I wanted it to increase when we have the second, when we go to the second page, it should now have all of the items from the first and the second page inside of it. And so the first thing that I'm realizing is that here I was printing out tags when I was thinking I was printing out items, that I want to the items variable, its meaning is supposed to be all of the items from all of the pages, and tags is only the things that we found in that one page. So I had a typo here. We'll go ahead and fix that and retry this. And so now we're printing out the length of items. That's good, but I'm still getting 67 for each of these. And so that tells me that somehow my items are not, like from this page, are not adding on to the items for this page. And here, the reason why that's happening is my items variable right here, I'm setting it to the empty list in the middle of this loop. And it's a big loop here because this is the loop over all of the page numbers. And so as soon as I get to the second URL right here, that's the second iteration of this loop, and I'm setting this equal to the empty list again. And so I had a little mistake here that should be not right there, but outside of this big for loop. And I'm going to give myself a little reminder about what this items is supposed to be. A list of all items found in all eBay web pages. And then this for loop doesn't have a topic sentence yet, so let's give it one loop over the eBay web pages. And now let's try this again, and hopefully that'll fix it. There we go. So we get 67 and then 134 for the second one. So now I have more confidence that I'm actually, that my items contains the items from both of these. Okay, so then the next thing is to, we have the name variable. We need to add a couple of more variables here. And before I do that, I'll just point out that we're pretty close to the time of the end of class. So we're not really close to being done yet. So I'm planning on, it'll probably be another 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes that we go to finish all this assignment. Okay, but yeah, so here's the name. The next thing that we want to do is, which one should we do next? I think let's do the free returns, that has some interesting things about it. So coming over here to the laptop, we can see that some items like this offer free returns listed down here, but other items like this one right here, there's no free returns. And so this one doesn't have free returns. This one does have free returns. This one doesn't. And so in order to identify whether an item has free returns or not, what we'll do is we'll inspect the element on free returns and see there's a bunch of classes down here. I'm gonna pick that one right there. That'll be the class that I'm looking for. And back over here, let's do another tags equals soup.select of pasting that class that contained the free returns text, and then do a for tag in tags again, and we'll print out tag equals comma tag. And so I'm going back to printing out the contents of this tag to just to check like what are the contents of it, to see that is this actually a good selector for what I'm trying to find. Save that, come down here, rerun this, and I'm going to go back to setting the num pages to be equal to 1 so that it runs a little bit faster and the output's a little bit easier to work with. And now we can see there's a whole bunch of stuff saying free returns. So that looks good. That looks like this is probably the thing that I want. And next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some quick housekeeping of my code that move these two sort of things together so they're like a paragraph. And I'm going to rename these tags variables so that they're a little bit more meaningful. This will be tags underscore name, and this will be tags underscore free returns, and tags underscore free returns. And this will just help me not get confused about what these variables are referring to. Another thing that I want to do, and I just want to print out the length of both of these two tags variables here. So print length of tags underscore name equals tags underscore name, and print length of tags underscore free returns equals comma tags underscore free returns, like that. And let's see what that looks like in the output. And whoops, I forgot to actually put a length function over here. So the output's all crazy, containing the entire list. So let's go back and add that length function like this. I just want to see the numbers. There we go. And so we can see that 67 of the items have names. So basically every item has a name, but only about half of those items have free returns. And the question is, like, how do I know which of the items have the free returns and which of them don't? That here, each of these free returns, there's no like, I don't know, there's no information anywhere in here that can tell me about like which item does this correspond to. So inside of this loop right here where I have access to this free returns information, there's nowhere here that I can say modify the items that I've already created up here in order to add this tag of free returns or not free returns. And so what I'm going to do instead is I have to somehow associate these two things together. And there's a common trick when web scraping in order to do that. What I'm going to do is come back over here into back to Firefox, and let's just pick one of these items. It doesn't matter which one. But what I need to do is I need to find an HTML element that contains both the title up here and contains free returns inside of it. So it contains both this and this. And so let's see. And what I'm really looking for is one that contains like the entire item itself. And so here, this item wrapper looks like a good candidate. If I look at this item wrapper down here, there we go. Maybe even something outside of item wrapper, but this s-item looks like a good candidate. That this s-item seems to be a thing that sort of blocks all of these different items together. And yep, so here's all of these big list of items, and there we go. When I hover over each of these, a different thing is selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change my search query to be searching for s-item. And that's going to give me all of the different items. So we'll do tags underscore items equals soup dot select of dot s dash item like this. And then I'm going to do a for tag underscore item and tags underscore items. And this will loop over all of the items. I'm gonna, real quick, since I'm comment out these pieces of information down here and just work now on my tag underscore items. And here I want to print tag underscore item equals, comma, tag underscore item. And down here, print length of tag underscore items equals length of tag underscore items, plural, like that. And now we'll rerun that. I'm just going to make sure that I'm getting the same number of items up here as I was before. Although it looks like I have a typo. That's tags plural underscore items, I believe. And there we go. Rerun that. And there we go, tags underscore items 67. So it is giving me the same number of items that I had before. So this for loop right here over tags underscore items over this CSS selector is giving me the same number of items that this for loop right here over the title did. So that gives me good confidence that this is in fact extracting all of the items. And if I look at this, I guess there's sort of too much information inside of each one of these tags to really look at it in detail. But this, I don't know, maybe this might sound weird, but this feels like the right sort of thing, what I was expecting. That when I was looking at just the title or just the free returns, I wasn't getting a whole lot of information back because those were sort of very deep in the HTML. But this one's a little bit more shallow in the HTML, farther over to the left in indentation, so it contains more information inside of it. And this actually inside of here contains the item title and this item free returns. And so inside of here, I can do something like for tag in, oops, I'll just copy and paste this right there. That now I'm going to do my tags name searching not in my soup object, which is contained from the entire HTML, but I'm going to do it just inside of the tag item object, tag underscore item object. And I'm going to be looking for names. And so here I'll have just create a variable name equals tag dot. Actually, before doing that, let's just print it out. Print tag equals comma tag dot text equals comma tag dot text, like this. Printing that out, and I'm gonna comment out this one because this was printing out a whole lot of stuff. I don't need to see the whole lot of stuff. I just want to see the text and make sure that this is in fact giving me the text of the tags like it looked like I was getting before. And rerun this. And this looks like what I was getting before when I was just doing this for loop and not the nested versions of the for loops. Inside of each one of these items, there should only be one tag that matches this. So this for loops, maybe not really necessary. I could do like indexing at 0. That would be fine. But what I'm going to do is I'll just start off as our name is equal to none. And then if it finds any matches in here, we'll say the name equals tag.text, like that. Similarly, oh, what did that do? Similarly, for my free returns, I'm going to copy and paste my free returns bit right here and do something like that. And now we'll create a variable free returns. Let's see, I'm not using underscores in other places, so let's not use an underscore here. Free returns equals false. But if we do find free returns in there, we'll say free returns equals true, like that. And now this name variable, and this free returns variable are going to be sort of associated together with each of the items. That's the key thing about this, is that for each of the items inside of eBay, we're going to get a name and a free returns. And we know that this free returns corresponds to the item with this name. When we were doing this before, when we had two separate for loops, there was no way to know what this free returns right here, this tag right here, which one of these tags up here that it corresponded to. There was no way to know that. And so that's why we're combining them together in this more complicated looking code. And now I'm going to, our ultimate goal is to create a dictionary which describes all the information from this file. And so let's go ahead and do that. I'll call my dictionary just item equals, so name, colon, name, and free returns, colon, free returns, like this. And then items dot append item, like that. And hopefully this will add this dictionary onto my item. I'm still printing out the length of items down here at the end, so I'm going to go ahead and rerun this and see if that length of items is increasing. Doo-doo. That was slow. Okay, but there we go. 67, 67, that looks good. And another thing that I want to do is I actually want to print out those items. So down here, let's do for item in items print item equals comma item. And we'll take a look at it and see if that looks like the information that I want to be getting. And so now we have a dictionary. Our name is each of these, and then free returns. We have, let's see, a bunch with true. Do any of these have false inside of them? Free returns. I don't see any free returns with false. So that suggests that I have some sort of error with my free returns somewhere. Let's come back up here. For tag in tags underscore free returns, free returns. Ah, here's the problem that I was looking inside of my soup. So soup again is the entire, where is it? Up here, the entire web page. I want to be looking inside of just the tag underscore item. And so for free returns, tag underscore item dot select. Similarly to how up here I had tag underscore item dot select for the item. Save that. Now we'll rerun it. Again, the principle here was that anytime I'm making any sort of change, always doing my best to find whatever edge cases I can and make sure that things are working before I go on to the next task. And so now we have a bunch of falses and trues, and so this looks good to me about what's going on. I think this is a good time to stop and see if anybody has questions. To see it in the chat, there's a question about the num pages argument not working. That's probably something that we'll have to look at one-on-one. That there's a lot of reasons why that might not work, and yeah, I can't think of any good general principles. But I will say that the num pages thing is not something that that's required. It's just something that I added as a to help me debug. So if you don't want to do that, there's no requirement for doing that.
Professor, I'm not sure if you answered this, but after downloading like 4 of the HTMLs, for the 5th one and above, I'm getting bot max page number exceeded, localized error message is missing. Do you know what that would be about?
Yeah, so this is a good question. I'm going to real quickly, in order to answer this question, there we go. I'm going to comment out these print statements right here. I'm going to rerun this with, we'll do the full num pages 10 here and see what's going to happen with my code. And so here you can see, so we get 67, then 134, then 201. It's going up and up. That looks nice. But eventually here on page 5, it's stuck at 268. And what's happening is that eBay is detecting that it is a bot that is traversing its web pages, and it's using a lot of different heuristics to do that. For example, the fact that all these requests are happening in order from 1 to 10, and they're just like within 1 second of each other. And so because of that, it's not displaying any more information. And for everybody's, all of your code, depending on your different system settings and your Python version and the time of day that you're running this, you might get different results like this. You might get different numbers than I am. And so eventually you might not be getting any results returned from later versions of higher page numbers. There are sort of like ways around this to trick eBay into thinking that it is a person doing these downloads, but that's not something that's required for this assignment. So I think, I don't know if this was exactly what was happening in your question, but I think it's the same. I think this is the underlying cause of what was happening is that just after a certain number, your eBay is not returning results, and depending on how your code is written, that might cause your code to get error messages when you stop getting results.
So is there any way to bypass that for now, or
I'm not sure what you mean by bypass it.
like, well, how do I get information about like the 5th web page and above?
Yeah, so for this assignment, you're not required to try to do any sort of like fancy trick eBay into thinking you're a human sort of things. So it's perfectly fine for most query terms. You're going to start getting zeros in your number of items returned. And the reason why I'm saying that you should, for the assignment, you should have a page number of 10 is because that's big enough that you'll get the first few pages and then hit 0 for things. And so on some queries, that might happen at page 5, some it might be page 3, some it might be page 9. And that's okay for this assignment. Yeah, good question. Any other questions so far? Okay. So let's see. I'm gonna, yeah, so there's a few more of these pieces of information that need to be extracted. I'm going to leave a couple of these for you to do on your own. But one that I do want to look at, another one that I want to look at is, let's see, which one? We're going to do the items sold one down here. And before doing this one though, I just want to finish up this last step of number 5, because this will be relatively easy to do and we're in a good position to do it now. It's using the JSON library to save the list to a JSON file. So at the end of our program down here, after we have actually gotten the items, then we can do a, so it's the with open, so file name, which I haven't defined yet, writing, And since we're going into JSON, I'm going to set my encoding be equal to ASCII like this as F, and then F dot write of something else. My file name is, according to the instructions, has to be your search terms .json. So it'll be args.search term like that plus .json. And then the thing that I have to write is json.dumps. So we talked about json.loads before. Json.dumps just goes the opposite direction. It converts a list or a dictionary into a JSON string. And so json.dumps of items like that. In order to use the JSON library, I have to import it. I don't think I'm doing that yet. Nope. Import JSON like that. And then we'll come down here and rerun that with a num pages equals to 1, so it goes faster. And no error messages. Over here, here's my hammer.json, and there's all the information stored. You can see that at the very beginning, there's this empty one. That's okay. That the very first item just happens to not have anything in its name. And so this data was set would need a little bit more cleaning, post-processing, but for our purposes, that's fine. And then so the remainder of implementing this is just adding small sections of code that look something like this for each one of the different items in the dictionary, and that'll complete the homework assignment. I do want, again, I mentioned I do want to do one more of those. I'm going to do the items sold, but I have to step out just for 1 second before I do that. So I apologize that I'm stepping out for a second, but I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. We had a screaming toddler. I don't know if you all, if Zoom's able to pick that up through my microphone, but trying to help with that for a second. Let me share my screen again. Maybe before I go back to the code, are there any questions at this point that I can answer? Yeah, Eddie.
Yeah, Professor, I don't know if this is you can answer like directly. Or my output is just basically item equals to name, item equals to free returns. It doesn't return. It doesn't give me anything of a dictionary. Maybe I don't know if you have time after class.
Yeah, I'd be happy to look at it after class. I'm trying to think of some maybe general things that could be causing something like that, and I think there's a lot of different things that could cause that. So
Gotcha.
I'll have to look at that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe so. I've talked a little bit about cleaning up code as we've been going. Before we go into looking at any more of these specific tasks, getting the different items in the dictionary, I just want to clean up my code a little bit more again. So that we don't need all of this stuff up here. We don't need, let's get those two prints next to each other. And then yeah, that's not going to be helpful. So add a little topic loop over the items in the page, and that's not going to be helpful anymore. Okay, so now the code's looking pretty good to me. I can just sort of scan what each of these sort of paragraphs are doing and take a look at it. Each one of these, and I could add a little sort of topic sentence to these about like extract the name, extract the free returns. Personally, I'd say this is getting a little bit too much comments for my taste. That my eyes, I guess they're well enough trained that I can just looking at this and like sort of under a second see exactly like what's going on. My eyes jump over here to this title. It's item underscore title. It seems like what else could that be other than the name of the thing? And see, this has free returns in that. What else could that be other than computing free returns? And I also have these like variables right here. This variable kind of clues me into the fact that this is sort of like a accumulator pattern sort of thing. And so the purpose of this paragraph is just to compute this variable. So personally, I wouldn't add any sort of comments here. It's not wrong to, not bad to, but I wouldn't do it. Maybe like thinking about the order of this a little bit better to help make it a little bit more obvious, putting that beforehand seems good to me since this serves as like the topic sentence. Our job of this little paragraph here is to compute the name. Our job of this little paragraph here is to compute free returns. And then anytime I have a for loop, if the thing that I'm sort of looping over, if I'm just computing it right then, I always try to put that right next to the for loop so that it's really easy when I'm looking at this for loop. I say, oh, what's tag's name? I just have to look one line to find it. So I always, if I'm creating a variable just to loop over it, I always try to put it right next to the for loop. So those seem really sort of obvious to me. And then these, this line here, just creating an item and appending it to items. So again, seems obvious to me what's going on, so I don't need to topic sentence that. But down here, I would do this of now, like write the JSON to a file, and that'll help me figure out what's going on here. Okay, so now I feel pretty good about this code. Pretty easy to read, and I know that all of the dictionary calculating things are going to happen inside of this for loop. So let's go next to, we're going to do items sold, that's right. And this one's a little bit more complicated. So let's take a look about how to do that. So what the item sold is referring to is, let's see, I don't know if laptops have it listed anywhere. But I know the hammer does, so let's go back to searching for hammers. And okay, let's do a control F, looking for the word sold. There we go. So on some items that are like particularly popular items on eBay, it says how many of them have been sold like this. 364 sold. Find a couple other examples. So whatever these things are, it's been 1,000 or so of them sold. 39 Thor hammers sold. And our goal is to extract this number right here from, extract that number from the item. So yeah, we'll go ahead and use the Thor hammer as my prototype, right click, inspect element. And here there's this class bold right here. So let's try doing class bold and seeing if that extracts what I want it to. And so down here, let's see, my items sold, we'll start that off as none following our pattern. And then our tags, items sold equals tag underscore item dot select of dot bold, like that. And then for tag in tags underscore items sold, I want to start by just printing out again the contents of that tag to make sure that I'm extracting good pieces of information here. And let's go ahead and run that. And so here we get, so there's like an 18 sold, so that's good. But then we get a lot of other bold things that are sort of totally irrelevant to what we're looking for. So this tag, this CSS selector is not a good one for this. And when you're working on the other dictionary items that you'll have to extract information from, picking out the good CSS selector is sort of, I don't know, the key, most difficult concept for these things. So let's come back over here and let's try to think about a different one. So let's try this one instead, item hotness. Copy that over here, replace bold with item hotness. That, save it, come down here and rerun it, and we'll see what sort of things we're extracting out. And okay, now we see a lot of solds. That looks good, but then, oh, okay, so an almost gone. That's no good. Here's a lot of good numbers. A last one. That's not what we're looking for. And some almost gones. Not what we're looking for. So this seems better to me, that most of these are related to have numbers inside of them. Although some of them, like this, 24 watchers, it's got a number, that's not it. Almost gone, that's not good. And so neither the bold nor item hotness seemed to work here to extract the information that we want. And looking at these results here, like, there's no real way for me to exclude this thing and keep the other ones, because they have the same tags. Maybe I could write a complicated CSS selector that selects things that do not contain this tag, but that still leaves me the problem of this right here. Like, there's no way just from these tags in order to differentiate between 14 watchers and 151 sold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue using this as my CSS selector, but I'm going to write a function that's going to parse this information into the different, actually extracting the number from these things here. And where I put this function doesn't really matter. I'm just going to go ahead and put it at the top. It's sort of traditional to put these functions at the top, although it's not necessarily required. And I'll call this function parse items sold. It's going to take as input, so let's give it a little doc test. Takes as input a string and returns the number of items sold as specified in the string. And so let's give it a parameter s here. I have some examples down here to work with, so let's go ahead and make some doc tests for this function. Parse items sold of that, and parse items sold of that. And parse items sold of that. So it's not all the possible tests, but those seem like three like distinct different categories of different things that I need to parse. And for something that looks like this, 38 sold, my goal is to return the number 38. For something that looks like this, 14 watchers, my goal is to return the number 0, and for almost gone, return the number 0 like this. Because even though this has a number inside of it, it's not a it's not the number representing how many things are sold. And down here, there's no number at all inside of it. And let's see. To start with, I'm just going to do a simple return 0 like this and get this parse items sold called down in my code down here. I'll say items underscore sold equals parse items sold of tag.text like that. Close that, and then down here returns items sold colon items underscore sold like that. And so now I'm extracting all of this information correctly from the HTML, and I'm putting it into the dictionary correctly, assuming that this function here works. And I'll go ahead and run this program, making sure there's no error messages. And let's go ahead and even check the output of JSON hammer.json, and we can see that the item sold is getting null in situations where there were no items sold. I'll bet if I searched through here eventually, we would get some where there's, there we go, an item sold 0. Here's the return value of my parse item sold function. And if I just get my parse item sold function working correctly, if I get this function working correctly, then this value right here will be correct, and this thing right here will be correct. So what I have to do in order to do that is basically just get this function to pass its doc tests. So now, in order to make this work, I don't have to like continue running my Python 3 eBay dl.py. That takes a long time to iterate over things and have it work correctly. And so instead, I'm just going to run the doc tests for this program and get the doc tests to work. And once the doc tests work, then I'll be pretty confident that the whole program itself will work. In order to make the doc tests work here, I'm going to Python 3-m doc tests of eBay dl.py like this, doc test singular like that. And you can see that it's still trying to download everything when running the doc tests. So I'm going to press Control-C here to stop this keyboard interrupt. And I'm going to make all of this code down here only happen when we're not running the doc tests. There's, in Python, what we call a common idiom of if name equals underscore main, like this. What this if statement means, this if statement says only run the code below when the Python file is run normally, where normally means not in the doc tests. And then to make all of this inside the if statement work, let's go ahead and indent all of that. And now if I save this, come up here, run the doc test, it's running the doc test really quickly like I want. And then down here, I'm going to run it without the doc tests, and we'll see that that still works running it without the doc tests. So this procedure that I'm going through right here, it's not at all required for this assignment. You don't have to do this. You don't have to create doc tests for any of these parsing operations. But I personally find that like these doc tests are a good tool for me while I'm debugging. So now I can focus on just like one particular task at a time, isolated from all the other tasks. And that's why I'm doing this. It's not required though. So if you wanted to just put the code that it will end up writing here for items sold directly into into this down here, right here, that's totally okay. But I think debugging it becomes much more difficult that way because you have to run the entire program and it's not clear if there is a bug. Is the bug in the item sold function or is it in somewhere else? But this way I can just focus on just this one function, get it working, and then once it's working, the rest of the code will be working as well. In order to get this working, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the accumulator pattern. I'll say, so numbers equals like this, and then for, we'll do, let's see here, let's change that to text instead of str. For char in text, if char is greater than or equal to 0, and well, let's do it this way. If char in all of these numbers, if char is a number, then numbers plus equals char like this. And then let's start by returning numbers and see if we're getting closer to our desired result here. Oops, and I want to run the doc tests since we're working on the function. And so we're getting 14 in this case, 38 as a string in this case. We need to convert that into a number, an actual number. So let's do int of numbers like that. Run this. And now only 2 out of the 3 are failing. I think this one up here is passing and these 2 are failing. This one right here, we should be getting 0 for 14 watchers, but we're getting 14. So what I want to do is if the word sold is in text, then we'll do this, else we'll return 0. So we got this code right here is computing whatever numbers are in the text. And then if the word sold is in the text, we'll return that as a number. Otherwise, we'll just return 0. So if we get the 14 watchers, then sold is not in the text. So hopefully that'll return 0. Save that down here, rerun that. And now all the doc tests are passing. So now I can come back here and rerun my code, make sure there's no errors when I run my code. And there's no errors. And so if I come back over here to Camera JSON, we get our item sold now. It's actually giving us the 129 for this high visibility green hand tools. We can double check this too. Let's just copy high visibility, come back over to here, Firefox. Let's see, it was page 1 that we were downloading. So let's look for high visibility green hand tools on page 1. High visibility green hand, there we go. And 129 is what's sold. So we are in fact extracting that correctly. And then for the ones that don't have it, we are correctly not putting any numbers there. In the homework, so we've done the name, we've done the free returns, and we've done items sold. Status will be a pretty easy one. That'll look just like name of doing a simple select query, the CSS selector. Shipping will also be a pretty simple one of another CSS selector. Price will be a little bit more complicated though, because the price, you'll have to like remove the $ and remove the dot, and it's specifically asking for the price in cents. So remove the $, remove the dot, and then you get your price in cents. And this is a sort of standard practice that whenever you're representing money inside of Python, you want to represent it as cents because if you remember the floating point values, the decimal values can't be represented exactly, and there's rounding errors, different errors. So anytime there's money, you always want to represent it as an integer somehow. And then, yeah, so for this price one, I'd recommend following this same pattern right here of creating a function that parses out the price and calling that after you've extracted it from beautiful soup like this. I guess it looks like I way underestimated the amount of time that I would be doing on this. So appreciate putting up with me and watching the whole video, but hopefully this makes it pretty straightforward for you to complete the assignment from this point, that you can use this code exactly as I've written. You'll just have to add a few more of these sections, 3 more for those other 3 items in the dictionary. Yeah, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those questions. No? William?
Would you mind screen sharing again and then showing
Sure.
the if statement with the name and then equals name? I just miscopied that.
Oh, yeah. So up here, this, yeah, so this is the if statement. You'll see this a lot in Python code, and it's basically just the stuff inside of this if statement doesn't get run when you run doc tests, but it does get run when you run the program like normal. And yeah, I guess this is just one of those tricks that that you'll see people using a lot, and feel free to use it or not use it, whatever is easiest for you. Eddie,
Actually,
did you have your hand up too?
Yes, I just want to make sure that the for tagging tax items, so I don't want, just want to make sure that I got the parse right. Do you mind?
This up here?
No, all the way down there. Item is item so.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yep.
Good questions. Any other questions?
Professor, I have questions pertaining to the other homeworks. If anyone has other questions, they can go first, and then I can ask maybe.
Sure, yeah. Any other questions about the eBay homework? Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording then, and take questions about any other topic.